What's up, guys? Mitch from RespectMyRegion.com back with another episode of the RMR Podcast. Today, I am joined by a guest, Devin Alexander of Rolling Releaf out in Massachusetts. How you doing today, Devin?
Good, man. Thanks for having me. Feeling good.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. So I know you've had a super interesting journey in this legal cannabis market. We'll get a little bit more into that here in a second. But I start off every episode just with the basic question of just understanding our guests' kind of origin story around the plant, and that plant being cannabis. You know, you can be personal or professional, but I'm just kind of curious your introduction to cannabis in both those realms of personal or professional.
Well, I've always been around cannabis my entire life. Both of my parents consumed cannabis and both of my grandparents, so it was never seen as a bad thing in my family. So I knew what it was before I actually knew what it was. And so just, through pop culture, music, TVs, just always seeing it, always seeing it. And then finally around like 15, actually trying it for the first time. And then when I was about 24, I got my first job legally in the cannabis industry as a bud tender at a local medical dispensary over here in Massachusetts.
Awesome, man. So what you said? What when was that? 2015.
That was roughly like 2015, 2016 when I started working as a bud tender. Before that, I was working as a pharmacy tech over in CVS. So I knew I wanted to switch over to cannabis because the skills that I learned in the pharmacy were very transferable to work as a bud tender.
Absolutely. I mean, for a lot of people, it's a medicinal thing. You're moving from one aspect of medicine to another aspect. What did you feel like? How did that transfer go from, the traditional, I guess at that point, a traditional business being in a pharmacy to something alternative or a little more edgy as in cannabis? Did you feel like it was very similar for you, or do you feel like a relief or kind of lacks a cooler environment moving to weed, or?
Oh, 100%. Definitely lacks some cooler environment, because when you're dealing with the pharmaceutical side, most of the time, people that roll up there, they're sick or they're not feeling good. So, people are really on edge. They're having to pay a lot of money for their prescription. Sometimes it's not covered by insurance. Sometimes they have to get, the generic version of it. And so just going over the cannabis, being medical, it was 21 plus, so we weren't open to the general public, and just a lot more lax vibes. People were happy to be in the dispensary, like you should have seen their faces light up every time they'd walk through the door, and that's what really resonated with myself.
Absolutely. And I think Massachusetts is one of the like newer, I'd say, adult use markets, right? Like over the last few years, we've seen a lot of people go medical. You guys have been one of the newer to enter into the full recreation, which I know has been a journey for the industry and yourself, certainly. But what did you notice kind of that shift from the medical, especially back then in those days, to recreation? How much of a shift have you kind of noticed?
Well, in Massachusetts, when it's medical, you had to be was vertically integrated, so you had to have your retail, cultivation, product manufacturing all under the same roof, and that wasn't the case for the adult use. Back when we were strictly medical, the Department of Public Health, governed the medical program, and then once adult use came online, that's when the Cannabis Control Commission was created, and they took over both the adult use and the medical. And if you wanted, to start medical, you had to have like $500,000 escrow for an application, and they didn't have any equity programs when the medical was just popping off. So with the introduction of adult use, you start to see people from disproportionately impacted areas start to get into the game.
Absolutely. And that's been something, for the East Coast has been really on the forefront of talking about social equity. I was telling you a little bit beforehand, I'm up here in Washington. They just started talking about social equity. Uh, I don't even know, like late 2019 publicly. Like we still don't even have anything. COVID was a perfect excuse for them to continue to fumble the rock. But the East Coast has definitely been on the forefront in terms of talking about it. Being that you've been living in that world, do you feel like a lot of it is just kind of talk and hype, or you feel like there's a lot of people really walking that walk?
There's a lot of talk and hype at the moment, because we still don't have access to capital. There's current bills in our legislature that will create a social equity trust fund and dish out grants and interest-free loans like they have out in Oakland, California. But as of right now, it is very difficult for equity applicants to obtain capital, and there's probably less than 10 actual equity applicants operating in the space right now. So we still got a long way to go in terms of reaching those goals.
Yeah, and that's something from the outside looking in. I've always applauded, the East Coast states and like Illinois have at least social equity and legalization have happened in tandem, whereas on the West Coast, predominantly, it's been like, let's pass weed and then let's talk about social equity later. And so,
Yeah, where you mess up. That's where it gets tricky. Colorado did the same thing, so you need to do it both at the same time for sure.
absolutely. I mean, either way, the government's gonna find a way to fuck it up. Doesn't really matter what route they go. But I was watching an interview of yours. I'm not sure when it was, but you were talking about kind of your entry when you first were pressing the line and had the Cannabis Commission out there kind of create this new license type for delivery and kind of and your importance of, and I believe your thoughts behind that of being like how this could be a very equitable entrance, being it's a lot lower cost than building out a cultivation facility or getting the real estate for a dispensary. But then I saw that there was opposition, and I saw you were talking about how it was like Martin Luther King Day or Black History Month, and people were tweeting out all this stuff, and you were like started calling them out by one. Could you kind of give me the synopsis of that story right there?
Yeah, no, that's great. It's over a year now. It's what's crazy to think about. So, in Massachusetts, delivery is set aside exclusively for equity applicants for the first few years. Originally, they had what is now known as the courier license, where you would have to have your location, contract with an adult use dispensary, and take on all their product prepackaged. Everything you didn't sell at the end of the day, you'd have to bring back to that store. And then after that exclusivity window is over, what incentive would that retailer have to keep a delivery company around if they can get into the game themselves? So I found it was imperative to create a new license which would allow us to source directly from cultivators, product manufacturers, and store at our facility overnight. The association that was opposed to that was made up of roughly 70% of the retailers in the state. And once they realized they were getting cut out of the equation, that's when they actually had a problem with it. People claim to care about equity until it affects their bottom line. So in January of 2021, that association filed a lawsuit against the Cannabis Control Commission, but grassroots activists were able to get them to drop the lawsuit within less than a week. But as you alluded to earlier, Martin Luther King Jr. Day was going on at the same time, and a lot of these companies were posting Black Lives Matter, equality for all, but you're part of a lawsuit that's filing against the most equitable provision Massachusetts has come up with to date, and they're mostly minority-owned businesses. That's what really set a fire under me.
Yeah, and I mean those contradicting things. I mean, it's baked. Not to go too political, it's baked into a lot of the system that we have in place in the country. But it's happening in cannabis, and it's like we've seen since the Black Lives Matter, this social movement over the last few years, it's become such a like. It's like the new gluten free, right? Like it's like a buzzword to be, oh, we're equitable, we're diverse, we support communities, like, and a lot of people do it for the marketing intentions and not necessarily the intentions behind what they're really saying.
100%. Black History Month just wrapped up, and we'll see how many people still support Black-owned businesses, the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I could understand coming from your perspective of that being just difficult to sit back and not say something. So, I salute you for getting on there. I know you said you were calling people out one by one.
Oh yeah, no, I had to do something, but it was a group effort. We were just hitting them every which way, and there's a power in numbers. I think people need to realize that, and we did it virtually. It was still COVID. Everyone was still pretty much locked down. All the people that I rallied with were all doing it from their living rooms. No lawyers, no lobbyists, just passion and hard work.
Hmm. And see, and that's like they say, like, there's certain quotes out there. I can't remember where, like, the media is the worst, could be such a powerful weapon, but it can also be used for good in these senses when people do come together and just shine light on, like, yo, this is not right. This is contradicting. And you put it out there for the public to see that and judge that. And it definitely puts pressure on people because when things are said behind closed doors, it's me, your word versus my word, no audience. I don't really have, I don't have very much incentive to follow through on whatever I'm going to say or say I'm doing.
Yeah, 100% too. And even to add to all the drama, the Cannabis Control Commission was accepting public comment. They were like, okay, how about you send us emails about what you want to see changed? But they never said they were going to make them public. So a lot of these people were sending emails to the commission, just bad mouthing social equity and bad mouthing stuff. And some of them were like, I don't even want to sign my name to this, but the CCC still put their name at the top of the email. So like a lot of people got put on blast. It was like soap opera level drama at that point.
Oh man, yeah, that's getting spicy, man. How have you felt, kind of embraced by, because obviously part of that is feeling, excluded from this industry, but how have you personally felt kind of embraced by the cannabis industry from your somewhat way of just forcing your way in?
Oh man, I get a lot of love, a lot of places where I go, especially cannabis related events, even non-cannabis related events. I'm on a lot of news channels out here in Massachusetts, and people will just run up to me and be like, "Hey, man," people I haven't seen in years, like, "I seen you on the news doing this. Oh my God, I'm so happy for you." I'm like, "You watch the news? That's so crazy, man!" Like, I have no idea. Like, you never know who's watching, especially when it comes to like interviews, podcasts, and stuff like that. And people who I've never met or people who I really admire, and they're like, "Hey, man, I really look up." I'm like, "You look up to me? Holy shit!" So I've definitely felt the love, and I just want to give it all back for sure.
And how much, I mean, obviously, again, following your journey from afar and just briefly being around you, I don't get the like front of the camera, like the desire to be the front of the camera. How much of that is just is a byproduct of like just your journey and the mission you've been on, and that's just been a byproduct of it? Or how much has it been being like, I need to kind of grab a platform to get my voice out there?
I mean, yeah, cannabis really gave me a platform. Nobody really cared what I had to say until I started doing all this delivery and social equity work. Um, I've grown up, I was really shy, but if I'm passionate about something and I'm very knowledgeable about it, I got to speak up. If someone, if you want, you got to be the change you want to see. And I can either just sit back and just, type on social media and complain about it, or you can come up with actual solutions, So it really took a lot of growth for myself because that's not something I usually do. I used to be terrified of public speaking.
Yeah, it's very very ironic to hear that, and then now you do quite a bit of that, but life will do that to you. Um, Man, and so, and that was, that's the other thing is like, how has it been kind of navigating, like getting this media attention and getting on that? Has it been, have you something that you've been able to see is like purposefully that you can use as a tool, or has it been like a big, like, I don't know, has it been a learning curve? Like, how has it been kind of just navigating, getting that attention from the media?
It's really just people reaching out to me through email, through LinkedIn. PBS NewsHour sent out a news crew to my house over the
Mm,
summertime, and just being on national news and being on the local news. It's really just them. I'm not like reaching out to them. I'm like,
mhm.
hey, can I hop on your show? It's all them coming to me, which is pretty crazy. So it's just trying to make the time to fit it all in, and it was just big or small. I don't care if you like a podcast with 10 listeners. If you invite me on your show, I'll come. Just share some knowledge.
Absolutely. What is it about the Massachusetts cannabis market to you that just stands out? Like, what are some things that you enjoy about that market? I know we were talking beforehand. You kind of traveled the globe a little bit around for cannabis, but what is it about that home market that, like, some of the elements that make it special to you?
The exclusivity for certain license types, such as delivery and social consumption, we were the first state to do that. So for delivery and social consumption, those are meant for equity applicants for the first 3 or 4 years, and I think that's very unique and that makes them stand out. Um, our equity program also expedites our licensing process. So when we submit an application, it would jump in front of a general applicant, and we also get application fees waived and our annual fees cut in half. I think those are, the biggest benefits of the whole industry and the program. But in terms of, like testing, like Massachusetts has some of the most stringent testing standards in the country, if not the most stringent. Like you're growing a plant in dirt, but yeah, failing it for like certain things that you're like, it's crazy. So the way I compare it is the cannabis that you would go and get at your local Massachusetts dispensary is more healthier for you to consume than the produce you would get at your local supermarket in Massachusetts because you can't use pesticides of any kind in cultivation practices in Mass.
Yeah, and I've heard that, and I heard that, yeah, I heard there's some stuff around like the moisture content that I heard some people out there complaining about, the not being able to get the quality or the right cure that they want due to these moisture
Yeah,
content.
a lot of people fail for mold. A lot of people. So it's crazy. And then, that actually drives their product down because they can only turn that into distillate, make cartridges, make edibles. So it's a tough market to be in, cultivation wise and testing wise, but there's still time for it to grow. And I think the commission has been very receptive as, regulation changes. They, every now and then, they'll hold public comment for people to say what they would like to see change with the regs, and that's how we got delivery change. That there was really the stars aligning at the time.
Yeah, and that's with this, I don't know, with the testing and getting it to the right aspect of providing the right flower. And something else I noticed about out there was that, coming from this medical market of vertically integration, a lot of the cultivation facilities are very large scale, right? Because when you're vertically integrated and you need all the products, you need to have a large scale facility. And so you guys are kind of also new to these single license types over the last couple years. And with that, we're
Uh,
seeing a little more craft cannabis. Have you noticed an increase in quality flower in the market with that?
Yeah, 100%. It's coming. It's definitely coming, man. Right now, as it stands, it's definitely market is dominated by MSOs, vertically integrated medical licenses. But I'll give a shout out to River Run Gardens. They're a micro business that's putting out some really good flower. Harbor House Collective, Ocean Breeze Cultivators, and I think that's going to be the next step of evolution in Massachusetts is brand identity and brand loyalty.
Yeah, because that's the thing, for our audience out there that's from the West Coast, a lot when you go out to Massachusetts, it's not every, but the majority of the dispensaries, especially the ones that have been there, almost all of their products are branded after their store, whether it's edibles, vapes, flower. Maybe they have an in-house brand, so it might be a little bit separate name for the store, but there's not a lot of competition. Whereas like I'm up here in Washington, you go to Washington or Oregon, it's nothing but craft growers, small scale 7,000 or 5,000 to like 15,000 square feet of canopy is like probably the average that you see. So you see a ton of people putting out quality, flower at various price points because they're able to just give it that love and care. And when you look at a market like that, it's a lot of large scale grows, same brand name as the dispensary. So there's not that brand identity like you're saying, at the flower level. And so that's definitely something that's changing. Do you feel like the consumers are starting to get that, or I mean, obviously the vertically integrated companies that have been there have kind of a leg up where they have their brand is established from a retail front and a products front. But do you feel like kind of these craft farms or farm cultivation only licenses are starting to kind of break through in terms of people knowing of the brands?
100%. We have a lot of great events that people can do pop-ups at, such as the Harvest Cup, the Boston Freedom Rally, and people are starting to become more consumer conscious about where they're getting their products from. Is it a minority-owned brand? Is it a woman-owned brand? We're starting to see a lot more of those, and consumers are starting to get more educated. And they're starting to realize that the THC percentages and everything. I think that's huge, definitely. People just assume the flower is going to be the best just because it tests really high. But I've
Hmm.
had some low flower that has done wonders.
Yeah, I just picked up an eighth the other day of something that tested at like 15%. I don't know. Definitely, I didn't look at it till I got home because I don't care about the THC percentage. But I was like, damn, this is the lowest THC I've ever seen. The dispensary's like, this shit's selling out. But again, I'm in Washington. If you have the right craft brand, they can do that. California, sadly, a lot of my clients out there, if it's not hitting close to 30 or above, like it's not, buyers aren't buying it, people aren't buying it.
Yeah,
It's a annoying situation. Um,
really.
but it is what it is. And back to the events, I briefly had met you out there at Boston Cannabis Week, and when I was out there for that, I really just got this feel of excitement around the industry. Like everybody was so stoked. I mean, I think that was one of the first bigger events coming out of COVID and lockdown. So I think there's just a natural excitement around that. But it just seemed like people in the industry are just so excited that adult use is there. These license types are starting to open up, and the industry's opening up. Is that an accurate representation of kind of the vibes around the industry there?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. When I first started, there was no adult use. Question four hadn't passed yet when I was a bud tender, so it was very difficult to get your foot in the door and just try to get a job. So now there's a lot more jobs, a lot more opportunity, a lot more things going on, and so you see a lot more people involved and a lot more excitement.
And then obviously, you traveled to a couple different places. Where would you put, the top quality cannabis in Massachusetts? Would you stack that up to the top quality in some of these other spots in the world?
Unfortunately, no. Massachusetts, even here in New England, we're kind of towards the bottom of a totem pole. Maine has some of the best cannabis in the country, and Rhode Island shortly thereafter. But they also have a lot more craft cultivators, and it's crazy because all their craft cultivators can also make amazing hash rosin as well. Like all of them, they just dope at washing their flower and making amazing hash. I'm like, that's great. Like the concentrate market in Massachusetts is abysmal. It's really, really, really miserable right now. But if you want, some real good live rosin, Maine and Rhode Island both accept out of state patients if you have your medical card. But it's gonna take time. We need to mature. This you just gotta have more. You just gotta keep at it and keep at it. Rhode Island and Maine had their head start before us, but we'll slowly get on there. But as it currently stands, Massachusetts flower, it really isn't something to write home about. I just like to be honest. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna front.
I respect that. I still give people shit. I went out to Denver years ago and I was like just super disappointed in like all the flower. I mean, it's not like it was terrible, but I was just like, man, I can't find anything in here that would contend in my top 10, with anywhere on the west, touching the Pacific Ocean. It's funny that people in Colorado call themselves West Coast too, because you can't see the fucking coast from there. Anyways, but I see that, and I see some people like, from Colorado are like, yeah, man, I get it. It sucks. But then some people just get super offended and they're like, nah, man, you're not smoking. I'm like, bro, I tried so much weed when I was out there and I didn't find anything that piqued my interest. I mean, when I was out in Mass, I definitely found some stuff I was impressed. My expectations going in were just, again, because, I live in the holy grail, the
Oh yeah,
epicenter of good weed. But
for sure.
I had very low expectations, and they were definitely exceeded when I was out there.
That's good to hear. Yeah, and definitely. I don't think the spot Harbor House Collective was even online when you guys were out here yet. So next time you guys pop on out, you guys are gonna have to check out Harbor House Collective in Chelsea, Mass. I think they have the best flower in Massachusetts right now.
Okay, yeah, I have to check that out. Yeah, and I didn't get up to Maine when I was out there, but that's definitely on my list, and that's what everybody was saying everywhere. They're like, "Oh, you like flower? Maine's not that far. Go check it
Yeah,
out."
yeah, man. That's really the reason I keep my medical card is to go to Maine.
Yeah, that's I mean, and you guys will get there obviously with getting these craft grows going. That's really where the flower, that's really where the quality comes from. And then you see it in any industry. I do a lot in music or anything. When something comes out and it's hot, it forces everyone else to compete. And the guys who got the big infrastructure and the big budgets, they can, maybe it's not in their business model to compete with the craft guys, but if that's what they want to go for, they definitely usually have the means to do so. That's just the motivation that they need to kind of go the extra mile to really like obsess over that shit overnight.
100%. Most people care more about quantity than quality at this moment in time. So they just, when the people come to me and bragging, oh, I got this size of facility, I'm like, big facilities aren't putting out that great of quality. Show me the small batch craft growers. That's what's putting out the fire.
Absolutely, absolutely. What are some? I mean, you listed some of those cultivators, but what are some of the brand? You guys are more into the cultivators. I think more in terms of brands. But what are some of those brands and cultivators out there that you like? You don't have to. People out there. He doesn't forget. He's just naming a few. I'm putting him on the spot, so don't be offended. But I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
Smith Cannabis, River Run Gardens, Harbor House Collective, um, Hidden Hemlock. That's a good brand that just came online, a brand new micro business. Northeast Alternatives. They won a bunch of awards out here. Let me think. Yeah, alternative compassionate services. If I do buy from a medical spot, I go alternative compassionate services. But no, that's mostly it, really. I think more people just need to go through the licensing process. The average wait time is roughly like 2 to 4 years.
Mhm.
We formed that LLC back in May of 2020, and we're just about halfway there.
Yeah, and that was some other questions I have just on your journey. Like when you first started Rolling Relief, was it more of an idea before the license type was there, or you kind of formed it as this license type came online?
It was formed before our actual license that we're going for was there. What we originally wanted to do is called a micro business. So in Massachusetts, a micro business is an umbrella term for a dual license. So a micro business allows you to have up to 5,000 square feet of cultivation, and you can wholesale up to 2,000 pounds per year via product manufacturing. And if you're social equity certified, you can apply for delivery endorsement and deliver all your products. So that's the only license you can have, though. They have limits on licenses. So if I want to do a dispensary, I can have 3 dispensaries. Want to do a grow, I can have 3 grows. But if you have a micro business, That's the only license type you can have, and there's no room for growth really. We were going to be called South Shore Greenery, and we were going to call the delivery wing of our business Rolling Relief. And but then we didn't want to miss out on the exclusivity window because we
Mm,
realized it was going to take a lot of time to raise capital and do a build out. And in my eyes, the exclusivity window for delivery was the crown jewel of the social equity program, and I wanted to be heavily involved in that. So we switched our attention to strictly delivery. So we formed the LLC in May of 2020, and we had to do a whole fight to create a whole new license, and that didn't come out till May of 2021. So we basically had to wait a whole year for application to come out, and I often wonder where would we be in the process if it was ready from the jump.
yeah, yeah, no, that's true. But and it's you've been building the brand since then, so what does it look like for you kind of building the brand, getting the name out there while not even being, fully operational?
It's huge. We're close to hitting 1,000 Instagram followers. We won awards for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as it currently stands, I'm the only minority in the company right now. So it just shows people see the name, they vote for it. People see Rolling Relief, they think of delivery, they think of Devin Alexander. So, I mean, the clothing line has been a big part of what we've been doing. And I took online courses with Parsons University out in New York, and we're going to have a whole dope collection dropping soon in the summertime, and really just making stickers, showing up at events, and just doing podcasts like this. Podcasts like this are huge, just to see people, just to get the name brand out there.
And what was the ultimate, inspiration behind, going from being a, pharmacy, working in a pharmacy to being a bud tender to being like, I want to own something, I want to create something. What was that like inspiration for you like?
It was really just working as a bud tender and seeing the people who ran the show had no fucking clue what they were doing. And that gave me all the confidence in the world. Once I realized the inner workings, I was like, this person was working at H&R Block 2 years ago. Like, I live, sleep, and eat cannabis. Like, this is the lifestyle for me. I'm very passionate about it. And I've surrounded myself with like-minded individuals. And, so that's where we really went. And once once I was at a bartender for a while, I worked my way up to events coordinator, and we hosted an expungement clinic. And the dispensary I was working for, didn't have the best reputation in the community, but a lot of people still showed up because I put it on, and that's what really made me realize these people are really here for you. They don't care about this. So,
Mm.
like, you can go off on your own, man. You got the backing of the community behind you. You have a lot of good resources. A lot of people that just want to lend a hand. So that's really all that culminated into the perfect storm to give me a lot of confidence to go off on my own.
I love that. No, I love that because it's understanding your value and your worth. You know what I mean? Like, and seeing that where it's not the company you're putting the work in for the company, you can put the same work in for yourself. And everyone's journey is different. Some people want to be a, I don't mean a cog in a wheel in a negative way, but be a part of a system or a team. And some people want to build and create. So I was just curious where that.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, I was very confident and comfortable just being a bud tender first. I was like, yo, I made it. I get to sell weed every day for a job. But then, time goes on, you see what goes on, you're like, wait a minute. But it's not for everybody, it's very daunting. When we got the money from COVID relief checks, that's the money I used, to start my LLC. And I couldn't go anywhere at all because everywhere was shut down. So I just had all the time in the world to just focus.
Mm.
So it's just lightning in a bottle, really. Like, I often question myself if I was, still out running around doing other things, would I have the time and the focus to really build the brand? And, it's kind of been a blessing in disguise, COVID-19 in some ways.
And how do you feel now, just obviously battling for this license type, you're over you 2 years into trying to get in the game, over a year of trying to get this active license since the license type became available. How are you feeling towards just the process? Are you still just like fighting and ready to fight, or you feel a little bit like kind of defeated by the process, or what's your temperature there?
It's really just building patience. That's the biggest thing in this whole game, is just having patience. And so I'm too deep in now. There's no turning back. So I got to see this thing through, regardless. Just the type of person I am. If I just gave up now, that shit would eat me alive, and I
Mm.
would think about it the rest of my life. So there's just no way in hell I'm ever gonna give up. So it's really just taking it one day at a time, having conversations with people who've been through the process, who are going through the process, people who are always there for support. Me, my business partner is basically my therapist. We both talk each other off the ledge, because we both had our low points and then we both have our high points. So, but it's a marathon. It's just not going to happen overnight. And people need to realize that if they're going to hop in this game.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially at this point in time, right? Like there's limited opportunity. It's very difficult. There's a lot of challenges, and you got to fight every step of the way. To
Yeah, they don't make it easy on you, man. Every which way. Like even right now, I'll drop a little knowledge. Like we're just getting held up over like minor parking and fencing issues. Literally, just
Mm.
that's what's holding us up to really go towards the next step. But we have a meeting on Mondays. Hopefully, we get to that sorted out.
What do you feel like others that are looking to get in the space? What can they learn from you? What's kind of the inspiration you can hope to impart on them?
You don't have to have a fancy business degree. You don't have to know a lot of people, like deep pockets. It's gonna help you, but if you don't know anybody, you don't have that shit off the rip. There's a lot of stuff you can teach yourself. There's a lot of people you can eventually meet if you just put yourself out there. Become available, have a good mind. Don't throw dirt on anybody else's name, and just stay focused and know what you want. You can get it. You either find a way, or you find an excuse.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Could you explain? I don't know too much about this, but I've seen some stuff out there that you guys were getting an exclusive a contract. But what's kind of the Paul Pierce situation going on? Is that still a play in motion?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. So there's a company called the Hubcraft. They have a licensing deal with Paul Pierce, and their former um, chief operating officer. She left recently, but their former chief operating officer, Noni Goldman, was one of my teachers in the equity program, and she reached out to me back in August and said, "Hey, Devin, we've been on panels together. I've seen what you've done in the delivery space. Would you be interested in taking on, celebrity brands that we've partnered with? One of them being Paul Pierce, and I'm a diehard Celtics fan, and I bleed green. They're my number one in sports team, and I grew up idolizing Paul Pierce, so it was a no-brainer for me. We got to meet him at a private event in Boston, and I tried to play it cool. I was like, yeah, I'm like, hey man, you're Paul fucking Pierce. It was right before he's going into the Hall of Fame too. So his brand's called the Truth 34. It's a line of flour, pre rolls, and concentrates. And once we, finally obtain a notice to commence operations, we'll be one of the first delivery companies in the state to have it. There's currently some other dispensaries that have it, but there's no delivery companies that have it.
Okay. Yeah, and it's funny, the celebrity weed game it's played out in California and across the country, but when you look at geo-local celebrities, what Paul Pierce means to Boston or just, the state of Massachusetts, the area in which is New England, like that's a highly, highly influential individual. So I, I
100%.
think that'll be an
And he,
exciting product.
yeah, and it's not like, he's just new to the weed game either.
Yeah.
He's an avid cannabis consumer. It's not just like, Martha Stewart just trying to come out here, Justin Bieber just doing his little thing. It's Paul's lived this, and cannabis has helped him. Back in the early 2000s, he got stabbed like 11 times at a nightclub out here in Boston, and he said cannabis, helped him cope with anxiety and other stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's a part of his story, but too, just the amount of influence he has in that area, right? Like, because that's what we constantly see celebrities, people partner, especially, I mean, California is the main state, but you'll see California partner with a celebrity who may be a big celebrity, but what's their actual, retail impact within that specific state? It's usually not very high. And when you partner with a celebrity, that's an extra hand that's got to eat off the supply chain. So you got a product that's a little bit more expensive to the consumer. And, as the consumer, do they care about that? And when you add someone like a Paul Pierce in an area like where you guys are at, I can absolutely
Yeah,
see that being a successful
yeah,
collaboration.
exactly. Like if Tom Brady started a weed line, it would go crazy. David Ortiz did one, same thing, So we're very big sports oriented out here, and we like our cannabis as well.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. Obviously, the Patriots out there, one of the best teams in all of sports. Their track record these last couple of decades is unrivaled across any sport. Who's the biggest sports team out there, in your opinion? Like, what do people get most hyped about?
When they're good, the Red Sox own Boston.
Okay.
All depends if they're good, and that's what it comes down to. And then you had the era with in the '80s with Bird and all that. So the Celtics were huge, the old Garden, the Bruins. But the Patriots, growing like I was, Tom Brady took over when I was 8 years old. He just retired and I'm 28. So literally all before my time, the Patriots were an afterthought. No one cared about the Patriots. They were gonna get sold and go down to Connecticut. Their games were never on the big channel. Tom Brady comes and just revolutionizes everything, turns it into a football town. But Boston loves the Red Sox 100%. People rocking all the hats. You see the Boston beat hat is the most synonymous with the city.
Yeah, and that's why and from the outside looking in, I feel like I see more Red Sox. I mean, now definitely as of late, you see Patriot fans everywhere, but growing up, you definitely see the Red Sox. Out here on the West Coast, people be diehard Red Sox fans. I used to run a sports retail store where we worked with New Era and Mitchell and Ness and did a bunch of custom hats. And we're in Washington, but Boston was definitely one of the that was one of our highest selling hats. If not, it might have even been our highest selling hat. Probably that of the Yankees.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's just it's a recognizable brand. You just automatically know. So you see that red B, boom, Boston.
Easy. So what's the pride like for people coming from Boston? You feel like people out there just have a huge pride for being from that area?
I like to think so. I myself do 100% take a lot of pride in the fact that I was born in Boston. And that's where I never imagined myself working in cannabis in my home state so young. I honestly thought if I wanted a career in cannabis, I was going to have to travel to Colorado or Oregon or Washington State. So the fact that I get to do it in my backyard means a lot to me.
And how quickly you feel like did that come from you being like, I want to be in cannabis, I'm gonna have to go somewhere else, and then all of a sudden, the snowball starts moving in your state.
When I was a senior in high school, there was no dispensaries, and that was not a career path that was plausible. It really didn't happen until even after I got out of college. It took like a year or two. So after I'd say in like 2015, 16, that's when a lot of stuff started ramping up. I never pictured myself. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I got out of college. I literally just was literally clueless. And then I found the CVS job on a website and was like, yeah, that seems respectable. I'll do that. Until the next thing comes along. The next best thing was cannabis.
Yeah. What is, we talked a little bit about, craft, but what are some of your and some of your favorite things about the Massachusetts market? But what are some of the things that Massachusetts needs to work on when it comes to cannabis?
They're known as host community agreements. So in Massachusetts, if you want to have any type of cannabis business, you have to obtain what is known as a host community agreement. That is a contract that is 5 years in length between the cannabis business and the municipality, saying that they have to pay 3% of their annual gross sales. Now, currently, as it stands, there is no oversight of these agreements, so they are ripe for extortion. So you will see some of these cities and towns asking for more than 3%, asking for donations to nonprofits, asking them to
Mm.
buy police cruises, playgrounds, and a few years back, a mayor in a town called Fall River was extorting cannabis companies for hundreds of thousands of dollars and 10 to 12 pounds of smokable flower. He's on his way to federal jail any day now. There's been a huge case about it, but that's part of the legislation right now. Is there's a bill that's going to do a lot of different things. It would give the Cannabis Control Commission oversight of these host community agreements. It would open up social consumption, and it would create social equity trust fund, all in one single bill.
Hmm.
But I'd say the HCA, the host community agreement process, is very damning because that goes to the highest bidder. It's very hard for these small time operators to obtain these agreements, and you can't move forward without them.
Yeah, and we're seeing similar things of corruption. There's been a lot of it alleged in New Jersey. Some news dropped in Florida not too long ago, showing a lot of corruption around it. I mean, it's quite it's very, I don't know. It's not fun, to see something that comes from the stigma of being around corruption and being illegal to become made legal, and then you see the white collar people or people in positions of power that should be overseeing that this is not rolling out like that, contributing to further fucking up the stigma of this shit, man. It sets us back.
Yeah. It's really, I've said it multiple times before. I don't know a single small time entrepreneur in this state that has had an easy path at all. At all. Like literally, 5 years from now, I'm gonna write a book on the Massachusetts market, and each chapter is gonna feature a different entrepreneur on their journey. And it might get even made into a movie. That's how crazy it's gonna be.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit. Yeah, there's a lot of shit going on, and I guarantee over these last couple of years, you got enough for your own movie. When it comes to delivery, specifically for the cannabis consumer, like I said, I'm in Washington. We don't have it, but I've been to many states that have it. What does that consumer demographic look like to you, like the delivery consumer versus the brick and mortar consumer?
People with ambulatory issues and older folk, people who have, especially with COVID, people don't want to go out, so people just you can get anything delivered to your house these days. So people that want to stay healthy, and can of moms too. I think that's going to be a big demographic that we eventually will tap into, because you can't bring your kid into the dispensary. They have to be
Mhm.
21 plus. So I think the can of mom is really gonna be a big benefactor of the delivery model.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I got a 3-year-old. My wife was just gone for a week, and thankfully I keep my supply, running okay. But I definitely
Yeah.
was. I had a little, thirst for a beverage, and I was like, man, I'm not gonna pull up and just leave this 3-year-old in the car seat
Exactly.
while I run into the store real quick.
100%, 100%.
But at the
So
same
I think
time, I could go to Safeway and go buy, 14 half gallons of alcohol with my son with me.
yeah,
So I don't.
crazy, especially brewery. I think that's what like really grinds my nerve. I have a
Right.
lot of homies who own breweries, but like people bring their whole damn family.
Mm,
They bring their kids, their wife, their dog.
mhm.
Drink a bunch of like 10% beers, then all file into the car and drive away, and nobody bats an eye. Like,
Oh, that's funny. I was just at a brewery with my son the other day, so I was letting him color while I was doing some sampling, keeping
yeah,
respectable. But no, it's very true. How much the stigma is still prevalent, right? And still entrenched in the legislation and the rules, and not just that, but also just how the general public views this shit, man. It's really, to be on the inside of it, it's really discouraging at times because, I mean, you said you were part of a lot of events. I've thrown a lot of events, and I still meet people that are so scared of cannabis. And I'm like, well, do you go to the bar? Have you ever been to a concert? Have you been to a baseball game? It doesn't matter, college to what, they're like fucking selling beer and all that shit. And it's like, go throw an event that just is a regular event where alcohol is there, and then go to a weed event, and you will notice night and day, especially if someone throwing it and responsible for the safety and well-being, and not seeing the destruction of property, is a night and day difference being at a cannabis event as opposed to a regular event that just has alcohol.
100%. And like definitely more cannabis events need to permit cannabis consumption at their
Hmm.
events, because a lot of these events, is heavy alcohol consumption going on at these cannabis events. So hopefully in the future we start to see more, people providing people. I went to a party, an MJ BizCon actually, for Grasslands, like the advertising agency out of
Hmm.
Colorado, and they threw it at like this Airbnb off the strip, and they were handing out, packed chillums. They had a bud bar and an alcohol bar. I was like, that's amazing. That's like how it should be.
Yeah, actually, I don't think we ran into each other. I was at that event too for a little bit, and yeah, yeah, it's like, Vegas, they do a lot. Like, I love California because you can do the actual licensed event where you have consumption, or you can do licensed delivery on site. And as again, coming from Washington, we've thrown a lot of similar events, but it's been a little bit more under the radar. But then that's the thing I've always been critical up here in Washington is you see these cannabis industry mixers or cannabis industry events, and there's free drinks, and you're like, where do I smoke? And like, oh, there's nowhere to smoke. And I'm like, do you realize that we're stigmatizing ourselves? We're in the industry and we're being like, nah, smoking weed, that's not okay. But you can drink.
Yeah. No, it really blows my mind sometimes. So there definitely needs to be more destigmatization in that sense, 100%.
And that's where I like, I don't know. Have you ever been to Hall of Flowers?
No, I'm hoping to go out to Palm Springs in May for the first time.
Yeah, yeah. If you do hit me, I'll be out there, and that's one of my favorite. I mean, it's like my favorite cannabis event, but I love it because it's like a B2B trade show, and then they have like just the outdoor area. It's not really it's just like you can smoke. It's not really like there's not bongs, there's not like dab bars, but you can just smoke, and it's like the perfect mix of like you can do business, you can look at products, you can go outside and try them, but it's not in this like party atmosphere. It's like just taking cannabis consumption that's casual that all of us probably participate in throughout our daily lives and integrating it into
Oh,
an event where it's not like look at me smoke so much. It's just like normal. It's completely normalized, and there's very few, especially business focused events that just have consumption so normalized.
yeah, and I'm very excited to experience that, and I think that's the way it should be, honestly.
Absolutely, absolutely. We got to see some of these other states get on game with that. Man, what do you hope to be? Your legacy in the cannabis industry.
Just want to be a well-respected person, well-respected brand. Just when people see my face, they hear my name, they know who I am and what I'm about. I don't have to explain myself really. I'm not in it for the money. I'm just really want to just do something I'm passionate about and make a decent living. And that's all I ever wanted, really. I can't see myself working in any other industry, honestly, ever again.
Said I'm not going back to CVS.
Hell no. Especially, oh man, if I was at CVS when all this COVID shit popped off, I would have quit instantly right there, right on spot.
I can see that, man. What's on the docket? I know obviously you guys getting that official launch, but what else you got up your sleeve for 2022?
Really just spreading the national awareness of who we are, even though we eventually would like to be in the New York market, but even just going to events around the country, we got NECANN here in Boston, and then April, we're going to go down to DC for the National Cannabis
Mm,
Festival. In May, we're going to go to MJ Unpacked out in New York, hopefully be at Hall of Flowers. Gonna go to the Black Cannabis Conference down in New Orleans. That's like November. There's really hopefully Seattle Hemp Fest pops off again. I've never been out there for that. I'd really love to experience that at least once. And really just bouncing around, taking speaking opportunities any way I can get them. If I could eventually, one of my goals would be to speak at South by Southwest. I
mm,
missed it this year, but I wanna. That's definitely a goal of mine in the near future.
mm. I love it, man. I love it. Anything else you want people to know about yourself or Rolling Relief?
We're rolling the leaf. We're gonna source the best products. All of our products are gonna be locals. We're gonna have no MSO brands on our menu whatsoever. It's gonna be small time people helping out other small time people. We have partnerships with the first black owned cultivator, Just Incredible Cultivation.
Mm,
So when people buy flower through Roll and Relief, they're gonna be supporting two black bits at the same time.
mm, That's a powerful statement right there, man. Not many, I don't know if anyone can say that in any state, honestly.
Yeah, so that's something I really take a lot of pride in. It's something we've been working on, just traveling the state to see who has the best of what.
Absolutely. I love it. Sourcing the right. So I appreciate you, Devin, for hopping on here, talking on our platform today, man, giving us some insight on the Massachusetts market, your journey. It's definitely been quite the journey. And I know there's a lot of people out there, us included, excited to get you guys to watch you guys get online and flourish in this space, man. You're standing for a lot of great things, and I think are very admirable for anyone to support, man. And so just wish you the best of luck and positive energy throughout the rest of this year, man.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
100%. So that's RMR Podcast with Devin Alexander of Rolling Relief. You can find them at rollingreleaf.org, and leaf is spelled as in leaf, Leaf. And then at rolling_relief on Instagram, correct?
That is correct. You got it, my man.
I took the right notes. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. We will see you guys next.